Hey guys, me Benedict Kim, and I wanted to talk to you guys today about this story in particular. All right, this one here. See this guy? That's Woody from Toy Story, and I'm very confident about it. And let me show you the story itself. This is the name of the story. All right, here you go for you guys to all take a close look at. The Steadfast Tin Soldier. All right, and this is an old book by Hans Christian Andersen. But I'm pretty sure that this guy right here, our friend right here, that's Woody, right? So I'll tell you this. This is what I know for a fact. And anyone does who's half smart in America, all right? You can see it right away. Disney built their studio on Hans Christian Andersen, the Brothers Grimm, all right? And maybe to some degree, Aesop's Fable, and of course, Dumas, okay? Because you guys might know this, but this famous story, the Steadfast Tin Soldier, all right, by Hans Christian Andersen, this story is the same story as Alexander Dumas's The Nutcracker, okay? Which is later turned into a ballet by Tchaikovsky in the late 1800s. But Alexander Dumas actually wrote a novel called The Nutcracker, okay? The same story. And before him, it was an old German legend, actually. And they're very confident of that. Modern historians, academia, okay, governments, that this is a story from Germany. And it was actually done by Hans Christian Andersen as well, all right? This one, okay? The Steadfast Tin Soldier. So I just noticed that. I noticed that, okay, the other day. That this story, all right, by Hans Christian Andersen, all right, starring this guy, the resolute tin soldier, the steadfast tin soldier. This is an old German tale going back to at least the 1700s, all right, in publishing form, all right. It goes back to Dumas. It goes back to Hans Christian Andersen, and it's clearly the same story as Toy Story. Okay, I'll put it that way. Toy Story is clearly some version of the Steadfast Tin Soldier. You could also say Dumas's The Nutcracker. All right. It's thought that Lasseter, when he was still living in Canada, he was actually doing like Christmas stuff most of the time. Like that was his main career, Christmas entertainment, Christmas caroling, Christmas carols. So he would have been familiar with stories like the Steadfast Tin Soldier because it's a European favorite. This was always a winner in Christmas, all right? Why? Because back when he was still very active in media, I would say like the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, it was all about Christmas stuff, namely from like Hans Christian Andersen, okay? And it was like the Nutcracker, all right? Santa Claus movies too, you could say. Home Alone, New York, which was about Christmas, okay? And then, of course, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and so on. And of course, the Steadfast Tin Soldier. This is where Toy Story came from, and I'm very confident of that. And that's a big ass lawsuit, and Toy Story gets like $100 million, all right, a month right now or something like that, okay? To keep working on Toy Story. Those guys get like $100 million a month, and there's only like 12 of them. And they need to address how their movie is from Hans Christian Andersen. Okay, it's this guy right here, and it's the Steadfast Tin Soldier. Some people call it the Resolute Tin Soldier from Hans Christian Andersen, and it's also an Alexander Dumas novel. All right, The Nutcracker. Okay, that famous Christian Christmas classic of New York and Germany. Because it really took off in New York, clearly, the Nutcracker. That might have surprised some people because I think for the old Germans and the old Europeans, that story, including this one, The Steadfast Tin Soldier, right, by this man, Hans Christian Andersen, it was always kind of like a poem for them that they had heard on Christmas, but maybe they hadn't seen like a big production of it, but they were putting that on in New York like crazy because the big joke is that all the fucking American, European storytellers, namely from like Germany, who made it in America and movies and Hollywood, they were like all fucking poor Germans who somehow made it on a boat to the States back in like the 80s, 90s, maybe even during Sarajevo. But that was like the big joke among these people, like Hans Christian Andersen, that these stories for poor kids would take off because like some poor kid from Germany was gonna make it in New York. I'm Benedict Kim. See you guys later. Bye.